5781, we will mark exactly 222 years to the release of Reb Shner Zalman Ladi from the Soviet Russian Tsar's prison. This is an event of simcha for Hasidei Chabad around the world, but also for Klal Yisrael. We would like to invite everyone who is watching this program to participate in the Simcha Shel Mitzvah Fabrengen in the community of Chabad of Talbiya, organized the Chabad of Talbiya Shluchim and orchestrated by Hani Cantorman, the Shluch of Chabad of Talbiya. This event is dedicated to the loving memory of Edna Cohen, Esther Bas Eliyahu, whose grandchildren around the world and her children served as Chabad Shluchim, Chassidim who spread the light of Yiddishkeit and the light of Chassidus. We hope you all enjoy the program, and would like to invite our esteemed Choshev MC tonight, Yossi Sverdlov from Chabad Anash Yerushalayim, and head of program project Derek Natan. Please have a Freilich Yom Tov and good Yom Tov L'Chassidus.
Good Yom Tov, everybody. Chag Sameach for all of you that are here and all of you that are home, enjoying this from your living rooms, dining rooms, kitchens, wherever you are. Welcome to the 8th annual Chabad of Talbiya Yud-Tes Kislev Fabrengen. The number 8 in Chassidus is very important. According to our holy mystics, the number 7 represents Teva, which is nature, and the number 8 represents something which is beyond nature. We are currently in a time in this world where things seem like they are beyond nature, but hopefully, with this beautiful Fabrengen, we will be able to overcome all the obstacles, and we will all have a beautiful, healthy, wonderful liberation on this evening. You know, one of the things that is known by Yud-Tes Kislev, the Chassidim say it is Rosh Hashanah LaChassidus. It is the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidism. It was on this date, in the year 1798, that the founder of Chabad Chassidim, Rabbi Shner Zalman Ladi, was freed from his imprisonment by the Tsarist Russia. More than a personal liberation, this was a fundamental event in the history of Hasidism, bringing in a new era, the revelation, the inner soul of Torah. The 5th Rebbe of Chabad, the Rebbe Rashab, refers to Yud-Tes Kislev as the day that brought Or V'Chayut, light and vitality, to our lives. The tremendous work that Rabbi Eliyahu and Rabbi Simcha Cantorman do on a daily basis is exactly that. They bring the or, they bring the light, they bring the chayut, they bring the vitality to everyone they meet and in everything that they do. So it's wonderful to be here tonight to celebrate together with the Cantormans in this beautiful event in honor of Yud-Tes Kislev. We have a wonderful program planned for you tonight, with great speakers such as Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, the Chief Rabbi of Efrat in Israel, and Rabbi Nissen Davidubov from London, England. We also have a special surprise, as we will be joined by 3 generations of singers. Chazan Chaim Eliezer Hershtik, his son Yisrael Hershtik, and his grandsons Yossi and Moshe. They will be accompanied by the world-famous musician Avi Piamenta and other special guests. We will warm up with 2 well-known Yunim, Kaylee Atta and Sama Lecha Nafshi, live from our studio right here in Talbiya. Sama Lecha Nafshi will be sung in tribute to Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, Zecher Tzadik Libracha, whose shleishim will be marked this upcoming Sunday, Chof Aleph Kislev. Rabbi Sachs was a dear friend to the Rudman family, which is the family of our Steve Rebbetzin, Rebbetzin Chanala. Since her childhood, she remembers Rabbi Sachs joining them in their home, singing many Nigunim, and one of his favorites, Tzama Lecha Nafshi. B'vakasha. Bruchim to you. We're still going to hear more from them coming up. But first, we have a very special program tonight, and we are very privileged and honored that this evening we will be addressed by Rabbi Shlomo Riskin. Rabbi Riskin has accomplished more than many others. He built one of the most popular synagogues in New York City called Lincoln Square Synagogue, and when he moved to Israel, he built from whole cloth Efrat, one of the most popular new cities in Israel, and now he serves as its chief rabbi. Rabbi Riskin also founded the Or Torah Stone institutions, who indeed bring a lot of or to the entire world. Rabbi Riskin has always been a great admirer of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Some even say that he may have been one of the Rebbe's secret shluchim. And I have no doubt that this evening he will share many of his memories and his unique pearls of Jewish wisdom. Rabbi Riskin, bevakasha.
Erev Tov, Chag Ula Tov. Yutet Kislev is a very important date when Rav Shlomo Zalman, Rav Shneur Zalman Miladi, the Alter Rebbe, was freed from prison. And this is really the rejoicing that we're celebrating this evening. There was no message as strong as the message of the Alter Rebbe, the connection between Ahavat Torah, Ahavat Yisrael, Ahavat Hashem. And this was the Mesirut Nefesh from the very beginning of Chabad, that Chabad always felt. Mesirut Nefesh is probably the greatest expression of that Ahavat Hashem and Ahavat Torah and Ahavat Yisrael. And this message went on from generation to generation. Some 6-7 generations later, when the Jews behind the Iron Curtain lived in Russia, obviously, and once again were threatened with all types of persecution and hatred of the Jewish people. And it was amazing how the Frierdiker Rebbe stood up to all of this exactly the way the Alter Rebbe did, placed his life on the line, and was imprisoned. He too was imprisoned. And there's an amazing story that I heard that I could never get out of my mind. He was imprisoned, and of course it was very difficult for the entire community outside of prison. And when the individual in charge walked into his cell, the individual in charge said to him, "We caught you going someplace this past Shabbat. Where were you going?" And the Rebbe looked right into his face, the inquisitor's face, and he said to him, "I don't know." The inquisitor took out a revolver and put it to the Rebbe's head. And he said, "Many heads have rolled because of this instrument in my hand. Again, I'm asking you, where did you go?" And again the Rebbe said, "I don't know." And he said to him with disbelief, "Aren't you afraid? Why do you look so calm?" And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, of course I'm calm. You know, you're expecting me to be frightened because your revolver can take me out of this world. But you don't understand that we Jews live always in two worlds. We live in the world of heaven and we live in the world of earth. Our neshamot, Chelek Elokam Imao, a part of Hashem from heaven, is always with us. And for us, Mai nafkamina ar'a orakia, po v'gam sham Yisrael HaMoshiach. In effect, what's the difference between earth and heaven? On earth as well as in heaven is our saving God. Wherever we are with God. And therefore I'm not afraid. The inspector had never come across anything like this. And he walked out of the room. Some time passed. The situation seemed to have died down. And the Frierdiker Rebbe was released from prison. When he came back to where he had lived previously, the inspector had summoned him again and said, tell me, I still can't understand. Why didn't you simply say where you were going? The Frierdiker Rebbe smiled. He said, you really don't understand. You know, every morning we say a prayer. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver. Blessed are you, O God, Lord of the universe, who prepares the steps of humans, who shows us the way that we should be going. So I never know when I get up in the morning exactly where I'm going. I'm waiting to get a message from Hashem. I thought I was going to one place. But at the end of the day, I was in your prison house. I really didn't know. And a human being never knows. We have to wait for God to direct our steps. And ever since I heard about that release from prison, I have also almost changed my attitude to life as a result of it. So let me give you just one example. I don't come from a religious home. My parents were not observant Jews. My paternal grandfather was a leading communist ideologue who was sent to Siberia and managed to get out. He organized the workers. He had a big factory, a factory which made the uniforms, army uniforms for the Tsar. And he organized the workers in his father's business against his father. A real communist ideologue who wrote for the Yiddish communist newspaper. Freiheit was called. My maternal grandmother was deeply religious, and that's another story. But my parents were not observant Jews. As spent every Friday afternoon and evening with my grandmother from age 10 to age 20. And she was deeply, deeply religious. My parents sent me to a day school because the public schools were not very good. And Baruch Hashem, I took to learning. And my real life was the Torah that I studied in the day school. My parents were poor. We lived in Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn. And I went to school on a scholarship. I also went to high school on a scholarship. Yeshiva University High School in Brooklyn. No money for summer camps. And in the summertime, I had enough money for my father's allowance to go to the New York Public Library, and I would sit in the library and learn. And I was supposed to go to Stuyvesant. The administrator, all year-round administrator, noticed this young boy sitting and coming into the library every day and learning. He asked about me. He asked why I'm not coming to yeshiva. I said there was no tuition money, and he gave me free 4 years. My parents weren't that happy that I was going to a yeshiva. And they would say again and again, as long as you'll promise me you're not going to become an Orthodox rabbi. Not because they were against orthodoxy. They knew it. I mean, my mother knew it very well from her home, and she had a warm feeling about it. But she felt that most Orthodox rabbis seemed to have not much of a salary, and my parents very much were anxious that I would at least make a good living. Anyway, when I finished high school, I won a complete scholarship to Harvard. And my parents' dream was that I was going to be a lawyer. And I sort of accepted within myself my parents' dream for me. The last Shavuot of my senior year in high school, I spent at Yeshiva University to learn all of that night. I felt I was leaving Yeshiva. I wanted to at least leave with a bang and spend the Yom Tov of Matan Torah in learning. Of course, I was up the whole night. And the Mashgiach Ruchani of Yeshiva University, Rav Yitzchak Lesson, had a beautiful voice. He was a Kohen, and I'm a Kohen. And early in the morning, just at sunrise, Vatikin, we davened Shacharis, and I went up to Duchen. Baruch Atah Hashem Asher Kiddishanu Kedushato Shel Aaron V'tzivanu V'vorech et Amo Yisrael B'Ahava. And I realized that my task as a Kohen was to teach Jews Torah with love. And that Ahavat Yisrael and Ahavat Torah and Ahavat Hashem, the deepest message of the Alter Rebbe, was what grants every human being the ability to live in the two worlds that I spoke about at the beginning of my talk. And I made an eder that no matter what, I'm going to go to a yeshiva. The way to bring people close to Torah is through love. This love is what is the major message of Chabad. Beginning with the Alter Rebbe, the unity of love of Torah and love of God and love of Israel. I began to understand that it's Chabad that understands more deeply than any other group today the importance and the connection between Ahavat Torah and Ahavat Yisrael and Ahavat Hashem Yitbarach. And there's no question that spiritual freedom, which enables us not to be imprisoned in this world and grants us the opportunity to live in both worlds at the same time, which is exactly what the Alter Rebbe meant initially. If you live in both worlds at the same time, every time you daven and every time you learn Torah, you are in Hashem's world. You are in the world of the Shemayim. And that has got to be my profession. That has got to be how I spend my time in my life. And that's what makes a person free, not to be imprisoned in this world alone, but to receive the freedom that can only come from understanding that we're in the eternal world as well, the world of Hashem and His Torah. Once again, Chag Sameach v'chol tov.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Riskin. As we know, it was just recently your 80th birthday. We wish you a wonderful life full of happiness and joy, and may Hashem give you the opportunity to continue inspiring Klal Yisrael as you do. And we're now happy to be rejoined by our chazanim and our musicians for another segment of music and joy. Thank you. we should all know and realize and take it to our heart. All we have to do is trust in Hashem, and Be'ezrat Hashem, with God's help, we will see redemption, we will see health, we will see happiness in everything that we do. Our next special guest, Rabbi Nissen David Dubov. Rabbi Dubov is the director of Chabad of South London. He is also a member of the executive committee of the board of directors of Chabad of Talbiya in the United Kingdom. Rabbi Dubov is a noted author and international speaker. He has composed more than 15 books, and he's also the author of the very successful JLI course called The Art of Marriage. We're very pleased and honored Rabbi Dubov has agreed to be with us this evening.
Thank you so much, Yossi. And thank you very, very much, Rabbi and Mrs. Ellie and Chana Kantzman, for inviting me to speak this evening. I just want to say how beautiful the words of Rabbi Riskin were, and Yarech Yomim al Mamlachtoi, he should be gesund, and he should greet Mashiach B'Korev Mamash. Also, a beautiful shout out, if I can, to Hinder, to Avram Hillel, to Eli, to Avi and Chaya, to Levi and Lee, to the amazing musicians which are here this evening, and friends all. Tonight I was told not to give a speech, but since we're also zoomed out, and today is Toiv Kislev, it's a good day in Kislev, tomorrow's Chai Kislev, and Shabbos is the beautiful holy day of Yutes Kislev. Tonight instead, we should have a warm Chassidische Verbringen in the comfort of your homes. And so I just want to start this evening with saying L'chaim to you. L'chaim, L'chaim, a gut yontef, L'shana toiva, belimud ha-chasidus, or bedarkei ha-chasidus, tikosevu v'seichaseimu. L'chaim, L'chaim. My Verbringen tonight is going to actually be in 3 parts, interspersed with Nigunim. Part number 1 are going to be the ground rules. I'm English at the end of the day. Part number 2 is going to be the roadmap. And part number 3 is going to be what we call here in our Chabad house, on your bike, Jack, which is the Hoirah, what we can take out of this beautiful evening. I was told in yeshiva what is the major difference between a speech and a Verbringen. In a speech, you're speaking to others. A Verbringen is more like a Kriya Shema Sha'alamita, like the Shema you say before you go to sleep, which you make a Cheshbon HaNefesh, you make a soul account, and it's almost as if the mashpia, the mentor, is addressing himself, but aloud so that others can hear that cheshbon hanefesh. And tonight, therefore, I'd like to really address myself. It's actually quite easy because I can't see anybody else on the screen apart from myself, so I really don't know who's out there. It's fantastic. I'm sitting here in Wimbledon and talking to an audience which I cannot see. I just do believe you're there, and I hope you can hear me as well. But I'm talking really to my own neshama. That's really what Hafotzas and Mayonas Chutza is all about. It's about taking the Mayon, the wellspring, and putting it in primarily your own Chutza, your Nefesh Bahamis, addressing yourself, so that your cup is full, and hopefully that overflows and really touches others as well. So, here are the ground rules. Poischin bibracha. I want to start off with a blessing. You should know, ladies and gentlemen, the mere fact that you're here tonight is a great bracha for you. The Frierdiker Rebbe said that HaKadosh Baruch Hu invites every single person personally who attends a Verbringen. You're not here because you just were bored and had to somehow deal with your boredom and you went into Chabad of Talbiya. You're here because Hashem invited you here. And what you're going to hear tonight is nothing to do with me. It's hashgacha pratis, and it's meant for you. V'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anochi metzavacha hayoim al levavecha. What a strange sentence. These words which I'm commanding you today should be on your heart. Surely the Hebrew should be bilavavecha, in your heart. The answer is, not always is our heart open to receive things. So the Torah tells us, put the words on your heart. But you never know when the words will go in. That's what a Chassidische Verbringen is. Tonight, what's happening is we're going to put words on our hearts, and may it be Hashem's will, that now or later, could be tonight, tomorrow, next week, in a few years' time, the words will go in, and it will change us. The Alter Rebbe himself said that anybody who participates in his simcha, these are the words of the Alter Rebbe, anybody who participates in his simcha, number one, he will take them min ha-meitzar el ha-merchav, from the narrow straits to the broad straits. Number two, he will take them min ha-geshem el ha-ruach, he'll take them from the material world into the spiritual world. And number three, he'll take them out of Gehenna. There is a beautiful talk of the Frierdiker Rebbe, of the previous Rebbe, Yud Tes Kislev, Tov Reish Tzadik Tes, where he explains in detail what exactly did the Alter Rebbe mean. And he says a beautiful thing. He says, Min ha-meitzel ha-merchav means you'll go from the world of Bria to the world of Atzilus. Min ha-geshem el ha-ruach, you'll go from the world of Yetzirah to the world of Bria. And min ha-gehenim, you'll go out of Olam Hazeh. And the Frierdiker Rebbe explains as follows. You know, what's the difference between Bria and Atzilus? In Atzilus, it's Kulei Elokus. There's no independent being. On Yud Tes Kislev, somebody who participates in the Alter Rebbe's Simcha, he'll take them from their ego to being basking, kuloi, entirely in Elokus. He'll take them from Gan Eden HaTachten, from the lower Garden of Eden to the higher Garden of Eden. And most importantly, he'll take us out of the craziness of this world. In Yiddish, the Sikh is, in der Welt was tummelt sich. In the world which is crazy, the hua, the media, everything that's going on, the lack of focus. This is the promise that anybody who joins in a Farbrengen of Yud Tes Kislev, the Alter Rebbe will take them out. Zechusai yogein aleinu. His merit will protect us, and the Tzemach Tzedek explained those words. The Zechusai means not just his merit, but Zechus comes from the word zichuch, refinement. The Alter Rebbe and the thousands of Chassidim who are in Gan Eden, and all their avodah should be mezachachas, should refine us, so that tonight we can be elevated by this beautiful Farbrengen. We can all go, min ha-meitzar, whichever narrow straits we are personally in, with all our personal challenges, with all our personal difficulties. We can go el ha-merchav, with all our hagshama, all our being within the material. We can perhaps krich out tonight, and we can go el haruach, to something more spiritual, to a spiritual plateau. And min ha-gehenim, we can go out of the humul-tumul of the world, and we can sharply focus on who we are and where we're going. So l'chaim, Hashem should help us on this path, l'chaim. Poischim b'dvar malchus. It says poischim b'bracha. You should start with a bracha, which we did. But poischim b'dvar malchus, it says you should also start with a word of malchus, a word from the Rebbe. I want to share with you a beautiful story. The Frierdiker Rebbe, in Sefer HaSichos Tofshin, he describes the very first Yud Tes Kislev, the year after the Alter Rebbe was set free from jail. Now you know that Arba Tzrichim Lahodas, 4 people need to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. One of those is a person who has been in jail, and particularly an arrest which was very difficult. And so there was great expectation as to when the Alter Rebbe was going to make this Su'udas Hoidah, this Thanksgiving meal. And many, many Chassidim flocked to Liadi for the Shabbos before Yud Tes Kislev in the year Tov Kuf Samach Beis, including Reb Isaac Homela, who was one of the greatest Hasidim of the time. That Shabbos, the Shabbos before Yud Tes Kislev, the Alter Rebbe said 3 Mamorim, 3 Hasidic discourses. On Friday night, he said the Maimah Vayishlach Yaakov. That's the Maimah which is printed in Torah Oir. He said on Shabbos morning the Maimah Vayokom Balayla, which is the second Maimah printed in Torah Oir. He said that Shabbos morning. And the Shabbos Mincha, he said the Maimah Vayikach Min Abo Biyodai. All of which are printed in Torah Oir. And of course, we've got to live with a Chassidische Parsha, which is to learn every single week. Torah Oir and Lekutei Torah, that's a different Parsha when you learn the Chassidische Parsha. That Tuesday, Yud Tes Kislev, the very first Yud Tes Kislev, that was celebrated after the liberation of the Alter Rebbe. The shul was packed from wall to wall. The Alter Rebbe walked in with a hadras covered. It says a pachad fell on all who were in the room. The Alter Rebbe walked in singing the nigun Se'ena Ure'ena. And he came and sat on the bimah and he sang the nigun Keliata, which we just beautifully sang. And then he sang the nigun of the Arba Bavos, which we will sing. That nigun of the 4 stanzas, which in Chabad we only sing on very special occasions like a wedding or on Yud Tes Kislev. And then he said the Maimah Poda V'Shalom Nafshi, which is in fact the Maimah Vayei Ovek Ish Imoy, also printed in this week's Torah Oir. After which, there was a Sudas Haidah. But because of the volume of people, the Alter Rebbe had the Sudas Haidah with his close family, and all the Chassidim had the Sudas Haidah separately. Reb Moshe, who was the son of the Alter Rebbe, came out later, and he was beset by the Chassidim. What was said at that Farbrengen? And he said, look, a lot of the stuff that was said was secret, but I will share one thing which the Alter Rebbe said, and he shared this with the Rabbi Isaac Homela, who shared it with Chassidim. And he said the following: the Alter Rebbe said in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, by Chassidim, there are 3 things which are Averos Mid'oraisa, which are scripturally prohibited. Number 1, shtus. I think in Israel they call it shtuyot. Number 2, atzvus, to be depressed. We're not talking here about clinical depression, melancholy. That's a no-no. And number 3, hergesh mailas atzmai, to feel yourself and your own importance. Those are 3 no-nos by Chassidim. However, there are also 3 things which are mitzvahs d'oraisa, which are positive mitzvahs by Chassidim. And they are, number 1, chochma, to be klug, to be smart. Number 2, simcha. And that simcha is generated by finding the good in everything and in every person. And the 3rd thing is zrizus bimasinus, to be quick at doing things, but to do it calculated. So the ground rules for tonight's Farbrengen, my friends, are: let's get rid of the shtus. Let's throw out of the window any atzvus. Let's forget about for a minute Milas Atzmai. It's not about me. Let's be smart. Let's be freila. Let's be azoris in internalizing the beautiful lessons and the beautiful ideas which Be'ezras Hashem will share tonight. L'chaim, let's sing now the nigun of the Arba Bavos, which you know is has the echelon of each world. It goes higher and higher. And in those worlds, as we raise higher and higher in our souls, ultimately, we want to reach the highest of the worlds, the world of Atzilus, the world of closeness, of proximity to Hashem. But you should also know what the Frierdiker Rebbe writes in the Sikha over there, that however high you get, you have no idea how much the world of Atzilus is so jealous of a Jew down here in this world who, despite all odds, does a beautiful mitzvah and does it with all their heart and soul. L'chaim.
L'chaim, l'chaim, Rabbi Duto. We enjoy very much your upbringing. Looking forward for the rest. Now we are going to play Sheibane Bet Hamikdash with the Chazan hairstick, and later we are going to make the Alter Rebbe Nigun, the Arba Bavot, the right way. Be'ezrat Hashem.
Oh
That was absolutely beautiful to see 3 generations. The Chut HaMeshula Shaloi B'Mehera Yenosek Kabedes Hashem Migroincha. Hashem should bless you all the generations, to serve Hashem with your beautiful, stunning voices. And I give you a bracha, Mitz Hashem, the Bekar of Mamish. You should stand in the Beis HaMikdash and sing Baruch Haba Melech HaMashiach. Reb Piamenta, I understand your taka right that we sang Sheyibana Beis HaMikdash before the Alter Rebbe's Nigun. I worked out why. Because Hashgacha Pratis, I learn, as many thousands of Yidden also learn in the world, 3 prakim of Rambam every day. And Punkt today, we started Hilchas Beis HaBechira, and the title of the new Sefer is Shalu Shalom Yerushalayim. And so consequently, you're 100% right that we started with asking about Yerushalayim and asking and begging HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Sheyibana Beis HaMikdash Mimher V'Yameinu V'Sein Chalkeinu B'Seirasecha L'chaim L'chaim. I never understood the connection between the two. We ask, Sheyibana Beis HaMikdash B'Mehera V'Yameinu, it should be built. Yeah, that I understand. V'sein chalkeinu b'seirasecha, and give us our portion in your Torah. What does that mean? What is the connection with Sheyibana Beis HaMikdash? The answer is, each and every one of us here on this beautiful Farbrengen, B'soich Klal Yisrael, has a chelek in Torah, has a portion in Torah which will bring the Geula. Because it says, Kol yemei chayecha lahavi limois HaMashiach. All the days of your life you need to spend in bringing the Shechina down to the earth, in manifesting godliness in this world. The same chelkeinu, we ask Hashem, give us our chelek in your Torah, so that we can manifest that godliness, Sheyibana Beis HaMikdash, and bring the binyan Beis HaMikdash. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to share with you tonight Torah of the Alter Rebbe. It's right that Mizal Ol Halten in the Klamke, we should hold the doorknob of the Rebbe's door. And the Tzemach Tzedek explained that means that we have to learn the Rebbe's Torah, but more important than cerebral learning is the internalization of that learning, of taking it within and its application in our midos and in our machshava, dibur, and in our maisa. And there's nowhere better to go than the Parshas HaShavua. But what I want to do with you this evening is to take you on a train that runs right through the entire Sefer of Bereshis. True, we're holding by Parshas Vayishlach. But I want to start tonight in Bereshis, and then to go to Noach, and to Lech Lecha, and to Vayer, right throughout to the end of Vayechi, and to share with you Torah of the Alter Rebbe, and how it all links together, and all comes together. And please God, in the next Chelek, after we've sung the Alter Rebbe's Nigun, we'll give the punchline. Bereshis bara Elokim, the Yesod, the beginning, there's a Borei Olam. We shouldn't forget it. Not in COVID times, not in any times. Yesh manhig lebirazu. There's an Eibishter, and Hashem is Teva Hatov Lehetiv. The Eibishter is a Guta. Hashem is good. And Beis Reishis. Hashem created the world for two reasons. Bishvil HaTorah u'Bishvil Yisrael. Bishvil HaTorah, Bishvil Yisrael means that Oiraisa Kudshubrichu and Yisrael Kulachad. And as the Zohar says, how do Yidden connect with Hashem? Yisrael al Yidei Oiraisa, they connect with Kudshubrichu. The Yidden, when we learn Torah, we connect with Hashem. And consequently, the first thing is we need to know is there is a Borei Olam un Manhigoi. Bereshis bara Elokim. Ubishvil HaTorah, Ubishvil Yisrael, the world was created. For what purpose? Noach, to create a naicha be'elyonim and a naicha betachtonim. Noach is from the word nachas, to create a joy to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because nisava HaKadosh Baruch Hu liyos lo yisbarach dira betachtonim. The Eibishter wanted, as it's explained in Tanya Perek Lamed Vav, based on a Medrash Tanchum in Parshas Nosai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu desired to have a dwelling where? Down here in this world. In this Tachton She'in Tachton Lamata Mimenu, in the lowest of all worlds in the terms of godly revelation, specifically here. This is where, in the arena of challenge that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to make a dira lo yisbarach, and how within the gedorim, within the parameters of the tachtonim of our minds and our hearts. And Eila told us Noach, Noach. It says Noach twice. Why? Naicho be'elyonim, because this will cause en nachas ruach in the higher worlds, naicho betachtonim. And Chassidus explains that in Perek Lamed Vav and Tanya, that all the Olamas Elyonim which we mentioned beforehand, Gan Eden HaTachton and Gan Eden HaElyon, all of it is a Yerida Me'or Panav Yisbarach, is a descent from the very essence of Hashem. Because at the end of the day, Hoidoi al Eretz v'Shamayim, just a mere ray, a fraction, an infinitesimally small ray of Hashem's power is invested in creation. And everything that which is in Gan Eden HaElyon is just a ziv. It's a fraction, a ray out of the essence. And consequently, when does the Olamas HaElyonim, when do the Neshamas in Gan Eden, when do all the higher worlds have their aliyah? When we down here cause a nachas ruach for HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Lubavitch. There used to be a Yid called Reb Yisrael the Freiliche. That was his name, the Yisrael the happy one. And he used to say the following, Oib ich Reb Yisrael gornisht. If I, Reb Yisrael the nothing, can goyrem zaim atzmus ein sof baruch hu anachas ruach. If I can cause the very essence of God happiness, soll ich nicht tanzen und springen mit Freude? Should I not jump and dance out of joy? How many of us on a daily basis contemplate the unbelievable nachas ruach, the joy that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has when we have one machshava, one dibur, one maaseh, one deed, which is kefi rotzen Hashem. What a tremendous nachas ruach this is. Neicha be'elyonim, neicha be'tachtonim. Eila told us Noach, and therefore lech lecha. And therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to a neshama, you have to go down mi igra rama lebira amikta, from your high precipice down into this low pit. And it's lecha, it's for your benefit. Me aretzecha. But when you get there, go out of your eretz, from the word rotzon. Go out of your own rotzonos. Meiladetecha. Go out of your birthplace, the social mores imposed upon you by where you come from. Umi beis avicha. From what you may have learned at home in your father's house. But go el ha'aretz asher arecha. Go from your rotzon to Hashem's rotzon. Batel rotzoncha mipnei rotzonoi. Lech lecha. Go down now, and go from this beautiful precipice, but down into this bira mikta. But vayera. Before you go, there has to be vayera elov Hashem. There needs to be a gilui elokus. You need to fill up in the spiritual gas station with all the energy required for your descent. And consequently, as Tanya starts, mashbiim oisei tehi tzadik v'al tehi rasha. A neshama takes an oath. Be a tzaddik when you get down there. And the Tzemach Tzedek said, the word mashbi can also be read masbiin, from the word svia or sveya, satiation. In other words, the neshama is satiated with all the necessary koiches that it will need when it comes down to this world. What a wonderful thought. All of us struggle. All of us face challenge. All of us, whichever coordinates you are in Ayin, Shin, Nun, V'har, Sinai, Oshan, Kuloi, Olam, Shana, Nefesh, soul, time, space, all of us are unique souls in a unique time, in a unique place, never to be repeated again, never before, never will be in the same coordinates. All of us face unique sets of challenges and opportunities, but we have to know, must be, and before we even come down to Olam Hazeh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives each one of us the koiches that we need to see through our mission in this earth. We just need to reveal it. Chaye Sarah. Chaye Sarah is the life of Sarah. Meya Shana, Esrim Shana, Sheva Shanim. Shnei Chaye Sarah, Kulon Shavin L'Toiva. Chassidus explains, what does it mean, Meya Shana? What does it mean, Esrim Shana? What does it mean, Sheva Shanim? So if you have a look in Chassidus, it tells you that Meya Shana refers to Rotzain and Tainug. You've got to sync your Rotzain, your Tainug, your pleasure with the Ratzon Hashem, with what Hashem delights in. Esrim Shana, your moichin, your mind, your intellect needs to be completely saturated, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya Perek Hey, with a yichud nifla, with an unbelievable unity, that when we're learning Torah, we're not learning just a fascinating shir, a chakira, a pilpul, a unbelievably clever item. We're learning Torah Hashem. We should never forget the noise in HaTorah, the giver of the Torah. This, what we're learning, is Hashem's Torah. And if we knew that by every piece of Mishnah, Gemara, Medrash that we're learning, we're actually syncing with divine wisdom, we'd approach it differently. And Sheva Shonim. Sheva Shonim refers to the 7 midos. Our Rotzoin, our Tainug, our Moichin, our midos, Kulon Shavin Latova. All of them have to be riding together in tandem. Lases lo yizborach dira, to create this beautiful dira betachtoinim. How do we do that? By toldos. We have to produce toldos. What are toldos? Toldos are the masim tovim that we do in this world. Nobody is buried with their Rolls Royce or in their Rolls Royce. You only take with you your good name and your good deeds. And the Ikar told us, Yaakov ve'Esav ha'amurim beparsha. Yaakov represents our engagement in Aseh Tov, in Kedusha, in holiness. Esav represents our turning away, sur merah, from things that we shouldn't be involved with. And most importantly, Yaakov and Esav are amurim beparsha. We have to elevate Esav so that he becomes Esav as he was a brother of Yaakov. And this is a process that begins in Vayetze. In Vayetze is the Avodah B'Poel Mamash. Vayetze Yaakov mi Be'er Shava. Yaakov is the Neshama. Yaakov is made of a Yud and an Akev, the highest place and the lowest place. Yud is the quintessential essence of the soul, the Yud. Akev is the heel. The Yud comes all the way down to the Akev in order to face that challenge. Ki sorisa im Elokim va'anoshim va'tuchol, and fight with the Sar Shel Esav and prevail. The whole name Yisrael is about prevailing. Vayetze Yaakov mi Be'er, where does it go? It goes Chorono, all the way down to Choron, the world of commerce, the world of Lovon, the world of swindling, the world in which there's a humul tumul. And Yaakov remains mitosoi shalema in such a world. And then, when he's dealt with Lavan, he comes and deals with an even greater challenge, that of Esav, his brother. Vayishlach Yaakov Malochim. The Alter Rebbe explains beautifully, what does it mean, Vayishlach Yaakov Malochim? Vayishlach Yaakov, who is in the world of Tikkun. He wants to see where is Esav holding, because Esav is a Bechor, and Esav stands from the world of Toihu, which is a higher world than the world of Tikkun. And Yaakov wants to elevate Esav to his Mokher v'Shoresh, to his root and to his source, to bring the Oiris of Toihu, the powerful lights which are hidden inside Esav, to be included within Yaakov. Oiros de Toyu in Kalim de Tikkun. In other words, Yaakov wants to take the tremendous Tachtoin, the lowest of all realms, and he wants to elevate it, revealing within it the highest of all beings, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Such an avodah, Vayeshev, brings to his Yashvos Bikush Yaakov Leishuv B'Shalva. Such an avodah brings to Miketz. Miketz means the end of. Miketz Shonosayim Yomim. The end of the dichotomy between two things, between heaven and earth, body and soul. That struggle will no longer be when Mashiach comes, because what will happen is that the body will ride in tandem with the soul. What does a chassid do under the talus, Shabbos, in mourning? There's an inner conversation. The Rebbe Rasha beautifully said that davening is hiskashrus hanashama, the connection of the soul, and the birur v'zichu chaguf, the refining of the body. Under that talus, when you've got your siddur open, you have an inner conversation. You have a look at three things. You have a look at how it should be, that you see in Shulchan Aruch. You have a look at how it is, that you see in the mirror. But the Farbrengen, the davening, is about how it could be. It's about moving from how it is to how it could be. How it should be is a goal, but how it could be, that's within each one of our hands this evening. And we want to create a miketch nosayim yomim, an end of the dichotomy, an end of the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov, an end of the Nefesh Elikis and the Nefesh Bahamis. There should be Ahavas Hashem b'chol levavecha, b'shnei yitzarecha, both riding in tandem, using the tremendous oiros de Toya which are invested in the Nefesh Bahamis, and using them as a vehicle to carry the beautiful oiros de Tikkun, so that both our Gashmias and Ruchnias is synced together in our Avodas Hashem. And such an Avodah brings a Vayigash, a fusion of Ruchnias and Gashmias, a fusion of Vayigash, Elob Yehuda, VaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Klal Yisrael, the ultimate marriage, the Nisuin, which we're so waiting for, Bebias HaMashiach. And then we'll be Zoicha to Vayechi, we'll be Zoicha to Chaim Nitzchim with Tchias HaMesim. What a beautiful journey from Bereishis all the way through to Vayechi. It can actually be divided into three parts. From Bereishis till Toildes is all the preparation for going down. In Vayetze and Vayishlach is the real hard work. And from Vayeshiv on to the end is the reward. When does Yud Tes Kislev take place? Yud Tes Kislev takes place in Parshas Vayishlach, in the hardest and grittiest of all moments. Because in order to take the Esav, in order to take the lowest of the low, you need the highest of the high. In order to survive in where we are now, we need to take the highest of teachings, the Kesser, the crown jewel, and we need to digest it. We need to live it. We need to spread it. And most important is we need to take the world around us, whether it's Yidden through Taryag Mitzvahs, Goyim Lahavdil through Sheva Mitzvah Shubnei Noach, or whether it would be Doimen, Sameach, and Chai through a Zoom or through a computer. We need to use everything as a vehicle for godliness. Hashem should help each one of us, that through this beautiful journey through Zeh Sefer Toldos Adam, which is called Sefer HaYoshar, the Sefer of the Yesharim, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Maaseh Avos Siman Lubanim, the deeds of the forefathers are a siman to each one of us, that's the roadmap of Klal Yisrael. It's a journey. We'll get to our destination. We're very near the beautiful destination of Bias HaMashiach. All we need to do is to reveal those koiches inside us, to make sure our cup is full and it's overflowing. L'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim, l'chaim, Babaydubo. Now finally we are getting to the peak, to the highest of music, if you can say, the Alter Rebbe Nigun, the Arba Bamot.
sang beautifully. L'chaim, you sang beautifully. You just reminded me whilst you were singing. I was singing the Alter Rebbe's Nigun, the Chassidim. After Yutes Kislev came to the Alter Rebbe, and they said to the Alter Rebbe, let's write a Megillah Yutes Kislev. Let's write a Megillah just like the Yidden did on Purim. And we'll have one day a year. We'll have a day like Purim. We'll have a Yutes Kislev, Mofabreng, and Shikar, and it'll be unbelievable. So they asked the Rebbe, could they write a Megillah Yutes Kislev? And the Alter Rebbe said no, because the story of Yutes Kislev is engraved on the hearts of Yisrael in Shamayim and down here on earth. And the Alter Rebbe said it will become a Yontiv Tmidi. And what he meant was it will be a Yontiv that is not just celebrated one day a year. It's going to be a Yontiv which is going to affect every day of the year. And he said, Ubo Yisrael Alpha Yisrael, thousands of Yidden will do tshuva on this day. And tshuva doesn't mean tshuva just on Averis. Tshuva means Toshuv Hey, bringing the Shechina out of Golus from your own Nefesh Bahamis. And he said, Ubo Yiskadol Yiskadol Shmei Rabba, that on this day Hashem's name will be sanctified and glorified. You sang the Alter Rebbe's Nigun beautifully in Nisheret Zichlavsi. And now we're coming to the end of the Farbrengen, to the bike ride, to the punchline. L'chaim, l'chaim. I mentioned beforehand that the Even Shebekeser HaMelech, the crown jewel, was taken. Everybody knows. It's a well-known thing. In the days of the Maggid of Mezrich, there was a blettel of Chassidus. There was a page of Chassidus which was found in the gutter. And the Pinchas Koretzer said, the teachings of Kabbalah and Chassidus are in the dirt. And there was a kitruk. There was an accusation in Shemayim. How is it possible that these beautiful teachings are being revealed? And the Alter Rebbe took away the kitruk by explaining a story. A mashal is well known that there was a child of a king, a prince, who was deathly ill, and all the physicians couldn't find any cure for him. And one physician came along and he said, if you take the crown jewel and you grind it and you mix it with water and you put drops on the lips of the child of the prince, then he may be revived. And the king was asked if he wants to do this. And the king said, of course, it's my child. And the crown jewel was taken, it was crushed up, and it was administered to the child, and the child lived. Everybody knows the marshal. And the Alter Rebbe said that in the days of the Baal Shem Tov, the Jewish people were in a state of spiritual faint. And in order to revive them, it was necessary to take the crown jewel and to grind it and to give it out in nuggets of the beautiful teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid. Frekt sich a kasha. Yesh lishol she'ela. So why did Yutes Kislev happen? Why was the Alter Rebbe arrested? What was wrong? We all know that when the Alter Rebbe was in jail, he was visited by the holy Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid. And the Alter Rebbe asked them, why is this happening? And they said, because there's a kitruk. There is a accusation in heaven. So the Alter Rebbe said, so should I stop my teaching? So they said, no, that since you have begun, you should carry on until Mashiach comes. And everybody knows that the main hafotzes hamayonos chutza, that when the Baal Shem Tov went to the Heichal HaMashiach one Rosh Hashanah, and he asked Mashiach, Ein Mosai Ka'asi Mar, when are you coming? And Mashiach quoted a pasuk in Mishlei, and he said, when your teachings will be widely dispersed and taught, disseminated. Everybody knows that started principally after Peterburg, after the release of the Alter Rebbe on Yutes Kislev, and consequently Yutes Kislev is not just the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus, it's the Matan Torah of Chassidus, because Torah was given an unbelievable way after Yutes Kislev. So you can ask the question, why was the Alter Rebbe arrested? Why not use the same rationale, the same marshal, that the Jewish people were in a state of faint and they needed elixir to revive them? The Alter Rebbe was providing it. And the answer is the following. In order to revive the Jewish people, it was enough to have the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid in nugget form, in Vertelach. But when the Alter Rebbe started teaching Chassidus in Chabad, in Chochmah, Bina, and Das, so that you and me, in our Kleine Kapelach, in our minds, we can understand what Tzimtzum is, what Ein Sof is, what Ishtalshelus is, what Oilemus are, what an Neshama is, what Bria Yesh Me'ayin is. We can open a Tanya, can understand it. We can understand Chassidus. This was not done beforehand. And there was a kitruk. There was an accusation in heaven. And the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid came to the Alter Rebbe and he asked them, I have a suffix. It's enough to revive the Jewish people with nuggets like yours. But my teachings are radically different. They're completely different. They come packaged in a way of Chochmah, Bina, and Das. Should I continue? And they said, yes. You know why? Because ultimately when Mashiach will come, what will we be doing? Ube'oisei Hazman, says the Rambam. In those days, or when Mashiach will come, Madanim Mitzuyim Kafar, you'll have pizzas and fleischig, vastevils, whatever you want. But what will you be doing? Lo yiyeh eisek ha'olam ela l'dasas Hashem bilvad. You'll be sitting, learning Chassidus, because then the Tachlis will be revealed, that a human being will be able to know Hashem kefi koach adam, according to what a human being can possibly do. And that started in the days of the Alter Rebbe. And it continued in his son, the Mittel Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe is known with Sfiras HaChochmah. His Mamorim were long, but they were quintessential. The Mittel Rebbe's Mamorim were broad rivers. Take a Maimer in Torah Oyer and take a Maimer in Torah Chaim, the same Maimer. One is 2 pages, one is 20 pages. And then came the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, and he sourced every single thing in Chassidus, in Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Soid, Kol HaTorah Kula. And then came his son, the Rebbe Marash, and he started Hemsheichim. He started developing ideas in Chassidus, 1 week after the other, continued by his son, the Rebbe Rashab, the Rambam of Torah Chassidus, who wrote Mamorim that could span 4 years. The Maimer of B'Shoshek Dimu Tov Reish Ayin Beis started on Shavuos Ayin Beis and went on for 4 years, developing the deepest tracks of Chassidus. And then came his son, the Frierdiker Rebbe, which Rabbi Riskin mentioned beforehand, had unbelievable Mesiras Nefesh. And when he came out, he came to America and he translated Chassidus into many different languages. And then came our Rebbe, which our Rebbe completely transformed the Jewish landscape, sent Shaluchim out to call Katz ve'Tevel ve'Iyeh Hayom. And then, Gekumen Anaya Kitruk. I want to say something now very radical. I didn't hear this from anybody, but I think it's emes lamita, and if it will arouse us to do something, is doch good. Came a psa, a Chinaman sneezed in Wuhan, und sie geworden a pandemic. What happened over here? What I think what happened is the world was awash. Your futsu ma'inoi secha chutza has been achieved. What more do you want? You open up the internet, you want to learn Chitas, Chumash, Tilim, Tanya, Rambam, you want to learn Dafa Yomi, you want to learn Mishnah Yemis, Halacha Yemis, it's there. It's out there. Chassidus, Kabbalah, Nigla, it's all out there. The Shluchim have gone to the Iyei Ayom. There are young light that have left Lech Lecha mi'artzecha mi'lartzecha mi'beis avicha el ha'aretz asher areka. There's young lights who are living in Winkelach, in small little towns with 100 Jews, and the whole reason they're going there is just to touch a Yid, because the Nasi Ador said that you have to go out. You got to take the mayon and bring it into the chutz and have an effect on these Yidden. It's been done. So why didn't Mashiach come? The answer is, I'm not a Rebbe, but this is what I think. Gekumen the Samach Mem. The Satan came and said, Gewalt, this is it. It's happening. I got to do something. A pandemic. Let's make a lockdown. Let's shut the whole thing down. Shuls, Batei Knesias, Medinas, stock exchanges, from top to bottom. Let's shut the whole thing down. I hope we'll be able to put the brakes on it. You have to know something. And this is the major lesson of this Farbrengen. When a Yid has a challenge, the whole point of the challenge is to elevate. Nosata lireecha nes lihisnoises. The Frierdiker Rebbe said there are three perushim in the word nes. Nes means nisoyen, a trial, a test, a tribulation. Nes means a banner. And nes means a miracle. And the Frierdiker Rebbe says they're all interrelated. If you are faced with a nisoyen, a challenge, it's supposed to act like the mast of a ship. When the wind bellows in the sails, it carries the ship above the waves, so that what happens is a minor miracle. So that when in Tel Aviv, the mayor says you cannot put a tefillin stand over here, so the Chassidim made Mivtza Ron. Ron said not to do it. We'll get 10,000 Jews to put tefillin on. Any challenge, anything, is meant to bring more. COVID, shut every single shul, Chabad, shut it all down. What is the response? The response, what does Eibishter want? Hashem wants, completely new level. Not just to glow in the dark, but to grow in the dark, from the dark, to a completely higher level. Hashem wants us in our homes. Hashem wants us where we are locked down, in ourselves now. And whether in lockdown, not in lockdown, depends where you're listening to this. In London, we just came a bit out of lockdown, but we're still in a bit of a lockdown. But the vert is, the nukud is, the point is, that where we are in our homes now, here, this is where we have to make godliness manifest. We have to learn chassidus where we are with ourselves, with our wives, and with our children. And today, through the machshirim, through Zoom, the sky is the limit. There is no excuse. And it's not something which is a burden. It's a machaya in every single language, in every single way possible. It's come tomorrow night, Yutes Kislev. The Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus, the Alter Rebbe said, Hikdashti Yutes Kislev k'mo Yom HaKippurim. I sanctified, said the Alter Rebbe, it's not from me, the Alter Rebbe said, I sanctified Yutes Kislev like Yom Kippur. Anything a Yid will request on Yutes Kislev will be fulfilled. That Tzemach Tzedek would go with a Tanya and he would dance hakofis on Simchas Torah. The Rebbe Rashab said, Oyer v'chayes nafsheinu niten lanu. The light and the life of our Torah has been given to us. The Rebbe Rashab called it Shleimas HaKavona HaMitis Bebrias Adam Alayoris. This is what it's all about. Rabbi Isai, tomorrow night is Yutes Kislev. Tomorrow night is an unbelievable day when the Torah Chassidus will be given to us for the entire coming year. Chab Tarayin Yidden. Grab this wonderful opportunity. Make beautiful new decisions to learn Hayoim Yoim, to learn Tanya, to learn the Seder of Torah, Oyer and Likutei Torah, to learn the Torah Rabbeinu, Likutei Sichas, and the Rishimas, and Igris, Mamorim, whatever you want, Sigizach. Today, it's Ein Sof. As long as you grab onto it, as long as you take it in with you, and ultimately, Sof Kol Sof, each one of us, this is what it's all about, each one of us taking the Mayon into my own chutzah, and from my chutzah, well, I've got to make my own cup full, it will overflow naturally to others. L'chaim chsidim, l'chaim, l'chaim, l'shana toiva, we should have a good kiben shiar. In Yitz Hashem should take away. The Alter Rebbe was Magdish Yutes Kislev, Lama sich wünschen, let's wish ourselves that we should krich out, min ha-meitzal America, we should go out of this terrible pandemic. But we shouldn't go back to the same Vergreptkeit, the same situation that we were before, and we should go min hageshem el haruach. We should forget all the shtusim. Mizal zayin besimcha. We should know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a reason behind all of this. And even though people have suffered terribly through this, and we have compassion and so on and so forth, but the fact is there's a destination, and we won Mashiach now. Mibetzach Mashiach yet ad Mosai. We cannot wait anymore. We've done everything. We've had a Yud Tes Kislev. COVID-19 is Hashgacha Pratis. The Samach Mem wanted to snuff out the COVID-19. This Yud Tes Kislev, this 19th of Kislev. Let's show him the Yad Achsidim Elo Elyona, that we are not taking no nonsense. We're going to grow from this situation. We're going to spread Chassidus, and we're going to spread the Dases Hashem, the knowledge of Hashem, in us, in Yidden, L'havdal in Goyim, in the whole world, until V'hoysal Hashem Hamlucha, V'hoyal Hashem L'melech al kol oretz, U'bayoyim ahu, Yeh Hashem echad, U'shmoi echad. L'chaim, L'chaim Livrocha.
Wow, Rabbi Duba, thank you very, very much. What a beautiful and inspiring Fabrengen. Yasher Koyach Godol. May you and your family be blessed with all good. I love what you said about youth tests being 19. May we get this inspiration of this Kislev, push away the darkness of the COVID-19 and bring us only simcha and rios, only health and happiness in everything that we do. Yasher Koyach. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. It's not over yet. We still have our musicians who are with us. We're going to have two beautiful surprises coming up. We have the Nigun of Hillel Miparish, which is a favorite of the Rebbetzin of our community here in Talbiya. And we also have the Tzemach Tzedek Nigun. So get your L'chaims ready. As soon we're going to sing these Nigunim together. I would also like to tell all of you that are watching, wherever you are, after the Nigun.
תלמודו בדרכי החסידות, תכתבו ותחתמו.
Amen. L'chaim, l'chaim. Thank you. This was such a beautiful upbringing, such a beautiful gathering. Thank you, Rabbi and Mrs. Canterman, Rabbi Canterman, for doing everything that you do. And I'd like to ask anyone who would like to help the wonderful work that the Cantermans do, please visit ChabadJerusalem.org.il and hit that donate button. Please, wishing you all a very good Yom May we go from this Geula of Yud-Tes Kislev to the Geula Amitis V'Ashlema, take it from Miyad Mamish. I am the